right. What is up, everyone? Welcome back to another episode here on the Lure Lab, a part of the Serious Angler Network. And this is episode 108. And as always, I'm your host, the captain, Andrew Full. And today we got a good one for you. We have Bassmaster Elite Series qualifier coming on, Andrew Loberg. And I believe this might be his second time coming on the Lure Lab, but he is no stranger to the Serious Angler Network, so we're always happy to have him on here. And we're diving into the Neko Rig or Neko Rig, however you want to pronounce it today, in the best worms, where to fish it, etc. And as always, anything that we talk about on this episode is going to be down in the description. So make sure you click those links, head on over to Omnia, type in Serious 10 at checkout, and you'll save 10% off your total order. And we're also going to go into the deep dive in the lake map here on the lake that we picked in the country on the best spot to throw the Neko Rig. So make sure you stay tuned for that part of this episode as well. It's going to help you catch more bass and put them in the boat. So without further ado, let's get Andrew on here and let's talk a little bass fishing. Andrew, what's going on, my man? Congrats.
Doing good, man. Thanks for having me on. As always, it's always fun chatting with you.
Yeah, last time you came on, I think we talked square bills, correct? It was like 50 episodes ago.
Yep, did a little square bill seminar, and it's about that time again too. So it's a good time of year to start chucking some square bills.
Are you out west currently at the moment?
No, I'm actually in Guntersville, Alabama. I'm at home in Guntersville, which is nice. You know, being out here and fishing out there on Guntersville has been pretty good. So it's a cool spot to be.
It's been up years, right? It's been up this year pretty good.
Yeah, weights have been massive all year. I mean, this is like my first year kind of living here and trying to learn the lake and the weights. You know, I fished a handful of tournaments out here. The weights have just been massive, all year. So it's gonna be a good winter, and next year I think is even gonna be better. So just goes to show you the more grass you have in fisheries, the better the lakes are.
Preach to the choir, right? Like, just keep preaching. Give us grass. So grass is a good thing. But anyways, let's get down to business. First, I want to say congrats on qualifying for the Elite Series. We can't wait to watch your advancement there in tournament bass fishing. I know you were just recently on with Bailey on the Serious Angler Network, and I had to miss that one. So I have to go back and listen to it. But for those who do not know or throw it, what is the Neko or Neko Rig?
Yeah, so a Neko is a pretty basic approach. It's basically, if you think of a weightless Senko or weightless wacky rig Senko, it's basically that, but you add a nail to it in my eye. And it's just another technique and another finesse application, just like a shaky head or a shot where you're fishing, a bottom bait. So you have, whether it be a 4 to an 8-inch or even like a 10 or 12-inch worm. A lot of guys back in California use it as a giant worm, and you Neko Rig it. And it just basically is another finesse type tactic to get some bites and put them in the boat. And I've been throwing the Neko Rig for, probably over 10 years, honestly. I mean, I'm not going to say, I think it originated in Japan, but a lot of the Californians started throwing it in Southern California, and it moved to Northern California, and we started throwing on Clear Lake, and it was just, just a killer way to catch some big ones if they were just a little bit finicky, off some of those big baits like a jig or a swim bait or something like that. But a Neko Rig, by far, especially nowadays with live scope, is probably one of the hottest techniques out there. Next to, it's honestly, in my opinion, taking over and this could be a little controversial, taking over the place of a drop. Taking over the place of a drop shot. In a sense. Now when you get to smallmouth up north, that's a whole different ballgame. But when you come down and you're fishing for largemouth and even some spotted bass, it's definitely gaining some ground. Maybe not taking over, but it's definitely gaining some ground on a drop shot because it's just a little bit different approach. And with live scope, you can finally see the cover that you're fishing, right? So,
Yeah.
before, fishing rock and brush without live scope docks, you'd fire a Neko in there and you're just hoping I get that thing out. Even with a weedless, hook, you're getting hung up. And I mean, that's just what it is.
Yeah.
But now with live scope, you can kind of keep bait around brush, around rock, and kind of weasel it in there and get those bites. That's why I think the Neko's kind of on the up and up.
Fair enough. Yeah. And you can probably see it really well too when you shove a tungsten nail weight in there. You get a really good return with that denser
Yep.
metal. So,
Yep.
and we're going to
Exactly.
dive right
Yep.
into the juice of the episode, right? Like, there's probably hundreds
Yeah.
of worms that you can use for this setup. Do
Yeah.
you have a go-to one, or are there multiple ones that you like to throw?
Yeah. So I keep it fairly basic with the Neko, and I will dive into some other baits, but the most original, which I have the most confidence in, is just a 5-inch Yamamoto Senko. That's just the basis of it. The Senko, with you put a clear, for those not familiar with the Neko Rig, you take let's just say a Yamamoto Senko. You take a clear or a black tube, you shove it over the Senko, and then you basically just hook slide your hook over it, and it's a whacker presentation. And you shove a nail weight off the end of it. So the 5-inch Senko is by far one of my favorites for that. And then as the Neko has evolved the last handful of years, people have come out with new baits and different sizes, things like that. But Senko is probably my favorite. The Berkeley, the Magnum Hit Worm is probably second favorite. It's a little bit slender. It's a 6-inch worm, and it catches fish everywhere. I mean, that's my 2-prong approach on those two style of baits. And then another one I love to throw is a robo worm.
Mhm.
It's a little bit thinner than both of those, and in cleaner water, a
Are you
little bit
going
more
like the
finicky fish.
fat, or are you going like the OG
Uh,
slim?
I will do the fat, but I'll do the regular 6-inch as well. On those pressured scenarios, clear water, that regular 6-inch is definitely a killer.
Oh, man, that's
But those
awesome.
are probably my top three. And you go on Omnia or Tackle Shop, and you start seeing you click on top plastics and you go to worms. There are, as you know,
Hundreds.
hundreds of worms out there. I mean, there's infinite, and you can go look and see all these different worms, and you're like, okay, which one? I could put a O-ring on one of these and Neko Rig all of them. But out of those three, or out of all of them, those are my top three. They're just tried and true. Most guys on tour, that's kind of what's going on.
Perfect. So when you're fishing them, obviously a Senko to a Meg Hitworm and to a Robo Worm, you're probably using a different hook for all three of them because they have different profiles and mid bodies on them. So I guess, like, what are your go-to hooks and your weight sizes that you use? Because there's so many
Yeah,
different nail weight sizes for
yeah.
um, like specific conditions that you're looking for and how deep you're fishing it.
Yeah, so the hook, I kind of stick to one hook. It's the Gamakatsu, the B10 Stinger. That's probably, and I've used a ton of them over the years. Like the VMC, they make a pretty similar one to that Stinger hook. But the Gami B10 Stinger by far is my favorite. It's a little bit longer shanked, and it comes in all sizes. So you kind of just fit the hook to to whatever bait you're throwing. So that's by far my favorite hook. I pretty much exclusively use tungsten in all those applications, or all those baits. The only time I won't is sometimes on the Senko. I'll just shove a big old lead weight through it because it can handle it.
Mhm.
These other baits, like the Berkeley ones or anything thinner, a heavier weight just can't handle that bait. It's just too big and it'll break. So sometimes I will use a lead one if I'm not too worried about feeling the bottom or whatever. So most of the time it's going to be a tungsten. And to be honest with you, sizes, I keep it pretty basic. My buddy Phil Dutra, he put me onto the 332 ounce tungsten weight. It's a pretty heavy weight for a Neko, but in my opinion, I want that thing zipping down to the bottom. And A lot of times you'll get a reaction strike, but I want bottom contact on fish than Neko. So a 332 is by far my favorite. Most of the time when I get out of that 332 range, the heavier one, it's going to be like in the springtime, that slower fall, fishing over deep water, fish that are a little bit suspended. That's when I want that slower deal. So
make it hover a little bit
most
more.
of the time. Exactly. Most of the time. And that's where that robo worm comes into play. Use a little bit lighter weight and it looks a little bit more natural. But that 332, I just have all the confidence in the world. You can rip a long cast if they're finicky, and it just gets down to the bottom where they need to be.
Gotcha. Love it. So before we dive into where and when to throw it, right? Like I want to know what your setup is. Are you throwing it on a spinning rod and then maybe your reel, the braid, or straight fluoro, whatever your fluorocarbon leader is?
Yeah, so I use a pretty basic 7-foot. It's just a medium action rod, spinning rod, and I go a 12-pound P-line braid. Their new SpinX braid to most of the time 8 to 10. On that RoboWorm application, I've done even 5 and 6 pound, but that's pretty rare. Doing that, but 8 to 10 pound fluoro to a braided leader's pretty much the deal. And yeah, just really, a 7-foot, it doesn't need to be any longer or shorter. A 7-foot rod is pretty big. So
yeah,
really, the Wacky Rig Senko rod would be, or something like our shaky head rod. That could be about the same as your rod.
yeah.
If you can get a higher end rod, I would definitely play around with that just because it is a feel type of bite. So anytime you're around pressure scenarios or fishing bottom baits, a very sensitive rod definitely helps.
Helps you pick up the ghost bites, basically.
Exactly.
Love
Those are
that.
the ones. Those are normally the big ones.
Oh yeah.
Especially when you're picking up a spinning rod. When you're picking up a spinning rod, the bite normally should be tough. So you definitely want some good feel to it.
That is how I feel. So, well, the next one we're going to talk about the when and where, right? So we're going to pull in a lake here with the Omnia app, which is also on your web browser. Right now, I have just the satellite layer up with some wind blowing, and we just have a simple pocket here on a relatively popular, I would call it, southern reservoir. If you live in that area, you probably know right where it is. We're not going to name the lake, but we're going to talk about here with Andrew where he would approach the Neko Rig. So based on the wind conditions, where would you set up in this pocket, right, to throw a Neko Rig in the wintertime, moving into spring, if people are listening to this in the spring for the pre-spawn?
Yeah, so normally in the wintertime, you want to be closer to main river or to like a main creek or the main body of the lake, correct? So you want to be a little bit outside that pocket. The wintertime, like the fall going into the winter, the opposite effect of the spring going into the summer. They get out and go straight to the main lake. It's kind of what's going to happen. That's going on right now. It's fall transition going. So you have it. In the fall, a lot of bait gets pushed back up in there and fish travel back in that pocket. But as it gets cooler, the lake slip over, things like that, those fish start moving back to the main lake and basically just following the bait back out. So those two main points that are kind of out on that main pocket, even some of the secondary points, I'm positioning my boat out there. And with the Neko, you got to think of it as like a jig bite or something like target oriented, so if, when I approach that area, I'm going to be kind of graphing around or panning around with live scope, trying to see if there's any small rock piles, any brush piles, things like that. That's near a creek channel.
Probably out here would be a good bet off that point, right? Because you have a little island.
Yep, exactly. Maybe a little. Yep, exactly.
You got
the
a
one
guy
thing,
fishing
especially
here.
in the winter, exactly, kind of the juice right there. Yeah. So kind of in the winters can be kind of funny because there's some days where you have nice weather and some days, or most of the days, it's going to be cold. So you want to make sure to be around like I just said, the main part of the lake, but also near a drop off. And you don't have to be fishing in, 30 to 50 foot of water. It's got to be some sort of deep contour, just like that, where it's basically an elevator process where you have some sort of flat on top and then a really steep drop off if they go back down. They don't want to move far, just like that you're pointing out on that point. They don't want to move far from the bait because the bait's always going to be around that creek channel in the winter. But if that bait does slide up on top of that, they can move very, very fast. And there's, they don't have to move as far. So
Yeah.
that is a phenomenal of what I'm going to be focusing on in the winter.
Yeah, probably.
And then boat position. Exactly. In your boat position, definitely be pointing straight into the wind. And the Neko, especially in the winter, you want to be fishing it fairly slow. That bait with the 332 ounce weight, you fire out there, rock pile, a little brush, some stumps, whatever it may be. You want to get that thing down to the bottom. And a lot of times, if the water's not clean, they should be pretty much stuck to the bottom, those fish. They want to be close to something.
Right.
So you want to be, that bait wants to be, you need to have that Neko around that object as long as you can and kind of make them bite. But yeah, that winter time, you can basically, pull up a map just like that and look at all these main lake points, maybe where the creek channel or main river hits them, has that deep contour, and you can kind of run a little pattern and base it off of that. And then Neko, just like a drop shot, just like some other baits, is a great way to get some bites.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and like this is CMAP powered too, right? So as you zoom in, you can get the deeper breaks on the points, but you can see where the bottom hardness is. So there might be hard rock there, or there could be timber, etc. And that's what you want to focus on. And another tip that I want to ask you about, and I could be wrong here, like if your nose is pointed into the wind, right? Say you're fishing this little island here, you want to cast past your target, right? Because you have that wind driven current. So you want to make sure
Exactly.
how heavy of your weight is, cast past it with that wind. It's going to draw your bait back towards the boat. So always take that into account.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah, you get a little wind like that. Exactly. Especially with the braided line, it'll float a little bit. So it'll actually, that wind will push that bait back a touch.
Oh man, there's so much about fishing. It's awesome to continue to learn about it. But so when it comes to picking the worm that you're throwing, right? Like, do you use the same color in every condition, or do you change it up based on like sunlight, muddy water, or cloudy, rainy, and gin clear water? Like, when do you dictate when you're gonna change up colors, if you do?
So green pumpkin's the universal color everywhere, no matter what. Watercolor, doesn't matter. Largemouth, smallmouth, spotted bass, green pumpkin. Buy a ton of green pumpkin. That's just all there is to it. I will change colors based off of watercolor and off of time of year. Time of year where I do change it, I love going to like a pink or a red type of color, something brighter in the springtime when they're kind of trying to spawn and things like that. Or if the water's dirty, black and blue, killer. Some darker shade of purple is always good in that dirtier water. But green pumpkin, another one that's great in the springtime is like a baby bass color or like a natural shad. Those colors right there, they crush them. And then like I just mentioned, a few colors based off of the spring. You can kind of go through a handful of them, but outside of the spring, man, that just a green pumpkin is just all around just the best color in my opinion. Because I fish a lot of new lakes, and having confidence in one color, a green pumpkin, it just matches so many different types of forage and bait fish. And most of the time when you're fishing a bottom bait, green pumpkin just imitates, a crawfish, obviously, a bluegill, some type of sunfish, whatever it may be, a baby bass. So that green pumpkin color on the bottom can just imitate so many different things, And if I were to go to like a shad type color, that's when you do kind of slow down and throw that lighter tungsten weight in there for a suspended bass and get them that way. But to be honest with you, that green pumpkin and all of those baits is just a killer.
Yeah, when in doubt, green pumpkin it out, right? Like it's something
Exactly.
that I feel like I always have tied on no matter what. It's like green pumpkin, black and blue. And if I have to change it up, it's just like you said, maybe like a pink, like a morning dawn,
Yep.
or sometimes watermelon red. Like those
Right.
are pretty much
Exactly.
all you need. So
Exactly. And then, once you start getting confidence in the Neko rig and maybe the lake you're fishing, I mean, all those brands, especially RoboWorm, you go on RoboWorm's website
oh my
or,
gosh.
or you're looking, you're like, I want to pick every single color. Maybe first off, pick a couple basics, try them out, and then maybe dive in and get a little top secret color. That's what I like to do. So
Yeah.
pick something basic and then just straight dive in and go psycho.
Yeah, I'd buy one pack of each and then mess around and figure it out.
Yep,
The only
exactly.
thing that drives me nuts about top secret colors is it seems like either they are on it one day and then the next day you go back and they won't touch it for like 2 weeks. And then there's that
I
one day
know.
again where that's all they want, and you're just like, come on.
Yeah,
And you're
it's
like, this
funny
is
because
why
when they're on it, yeah, when they're on it and no one's using it, you go
it's all
online or
they'll
go to the
eat.
shop and you're like, I need every single one of them.
Yeah. And then
No
you
one's
clue
buying these.
away. Yeah.
Yep,
Like somebody
no one's
shows up
buying
to
these.
Omnia and they're like, okay, why is there's no packs left in this one color? What's going on here?
Exactly. And that is a
Who
good
bought
that
them
is
all?
a good tip. That is a good tip as well, is when you go shopping online, look at what's kind of sold out or look what's low on the pegs. And that's when you can kind of tell what's happening around your local lakes.
It's a great indicator. So
Yeah.
I got two more questions for you here before we wrap up. But one of the big ones I'm sure, and because a lot of people want to start with power when they're fishing tournaments, or with like the live scope age, everyone starts finesse. Is the Neko rig something that you pull right out of the box on a derby day, or if you're practicing or out fun fishing and throwing right
Yeah.
away, or if it's something that you're working to throughout the day and you're like, oh crap, I need 2 more bites and I got an hour, let me pull out the trusty old Neko rig and dive in here and see if we can get 2 keepers.
So I mean, a lot of the times I'll just have it on the deck. I mean, I literally keep one on the deck, and I will start with it. Especially on a new lake, you want to be picking something that you have confidence in that will get bites. Even if the fishing, say you go to a new lake, and they're like, wow, they're busting 20 pounds like every day, and this is going to be on. Even on something like that, maybe your first handful of casts is a Neko, pull up to a point, make a few fires, and they're just ripping it. You're like, okay, this is an easy deal. I can just go do this everywhere. Maybe let's put the Neko down and let's pick up a big jig or a swim bait or a crankbait and then go in from there. If you start out big on a new lake or a tournament before a tournament or practicing, that's when you lose confidence in spots and things like that on a lake. When before you pick up that Neko, knowing you're going to get a bite if there's a fish around, and you can get confidence in areas and catch all of them you want.
Right. Love it. So before we
Yeah.
wrap up here, Andrew, the last question is, do you have any tips that you can give to help people catch more bass throwing the Neko rig, like maybe on a presentation stand front? Like, how do you present it maybe?
Yeah, so with that heavier head in there, it's honestly fishes way easier than if you have in a lighter head, because if you put a lighter, I keep saying head, but a lighter tungsten nail in there, uh, your bait tends to float around, and when you move it, it moves too fast, things like that. So having a heavier head keeps a lot clearer bottom contact with your Neko rig. So when you fire that thing out, it's on the bottom. Uh, Dead sticking it just like you would a Senko, weightless Senko out there, just letting it sit around, and there's a 10-pounder, kind of the same type of deal. You can throw it out there near a target, and fish will be attracted to it. But most of the time, if you don't have live scope or you're just fishing around, you want to fire the thing out there and I just slowly pull my rod. I'll shake it sometimes. If it's summertime, I like to move it a little bit more. But wintertime, I just slowly move it on the bottom, feel all the rocks, feel what's going on. Because that worm, I mean, especially, wintertime, you're fishing deeper than, 10, 15, 20, 30, all the way down to, 50 foot if you have to.
Mhm.
There's going to be some sort of current moving that bait no matter what. So working that bait in the wintertime isn't necessarily, I got to work it, I got to twitch it. No, you don't really have to. You can kind of just slowly work it around, feel the rocks and feel what's going on, and they'll bite it. So it's really just a simple rig. Think of it as a shaky head. Think of it as a drop shot, but it's just a little bit different technique that gets more bites.
Love it. No, I appreciate you taking the time, Andrew. And
Yeah.
is there anything else that you feel like we may have missed before I cut you loose here?
Man, I don't think so. I like I said, just keep it basic to start out with. Then you can explore different hooks, different O-rings, different weights, different worms, sizes. Like I said earlier, there's guys back at home throwing 10-inch big worms, on a bait caster, catching giant ones doing that. So there's a ton of different methods. It's very customizable. With chartreuse pens, things like that. You could put little the rubber strands through that, make it look like a dice. I mean, there's all sorts of little tricks you can do to it to get more bites. So, but at first, keep it basic, get some bites, and then start going crazy with it.
Yeah, I like that. Keep it simple. And I think that's like one of the biggest things we come back to whenever I ask like any tips to help people catch more bass, right? Like everyone literally, I think every single person that's been on, the first words out of their mouth is keep it simple.
Yeah, especially in the wintertime, man. You rip that Neko out there, and you let that thing sit there, a big one's going to eat it no matter what. I mean, that's just what it is. They don't want to move fast. They want to be slow. They're lethargic. And out of most baits in the wintertime, that Neko is going to get that bite.
Got it. Well, I appreciate your time, my friend. And I look forward to having you on here again. Yeah. So get all the things tidied up here, man, and go catch them up this year. And we look forward to watching.
I appreciate it, man. Yeah, thanks for having me on, and let me know if I need to be on anytime soon. I love being on here.
Yeah, no worries at all. And if you get a free day this summer, if you guys come through New York at all, I don't think you are this year. Say we should definitely get out on Erie one day. It's been unreal.
Oh, I'd be so down. I'd be so down. I'll be up north, so I'll hit you up.
I tried to get Bryant to stop Smith last year after he left to St. Lawrence before he made the trip back home to Cali. And he's like, "Oh, I'm already like halfway home." I'm like, "Well, you should let me know. I caught 27 pounds this morning in an hour."
Yeah. I'll definitely be calling you. I'll be calling you for sure. That'd be fun.
Yeah. Maybe you, Bailey, and I can get out for a couple hours or something. Just have some fun.
That'd be sweet.
All right, man. Yeah. Well, yeah, I appreciate it. And we'll chat soon, buddy, and go catch him up.
Sounds good. I appreciate it. Take care.
Right. Have a good one. All right, everyone. Well, thanks for tuning in to this week's episode here on the Lure Lab, talking everything about the Neko Rig or Neko Rig, however you want to pronounce it. That's completely up to you. But awesome episode with Andrew Loberg. Glad to get him back here on the Lure Lab. Excited to see how he's going to fare in his first year on the Bassmaster Elite Series. And as always, everything is listed down below in the description that we talked about today. So head on over to Omnia, put some of them in your cart, type in Serious 10 to save 10%. So you can start catching a bunch of fish on the Neko Rig. But as always, if you're tuned in on YouTube, make sure you smash that subscribe button. We greatly appreciate it. Leave a comment down below what your favorite worm is to throw on the Neko Rig. If you're on your favorite podcast platform and it allows you to leave a review, please do so. It helps the Lure Lab be seen by more people who are interested in bass fishing and just want to find ways helpful and get helpful information to help them put more bass in the boat, kayak, or on the bank. So until next week, we will see you all then.